He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
When you see a warden in the street today, you see the same shiny shoes, neat uniform and big smile that you would expect.
But really, they're putting on a brave face, doing the mahi. Once you lift the lid and start talking to wardens, you slowly learn about the cracks in the organisation which they see. But we don't.
The Māori Wardens Association has become dysfunctional.
We don't see the support structures that hold them up.
Or don't hold them up.
Right. Māori Wardens have been in the Manaaki game for nearly 170 years. With 170 years of practice under their belt, I guess I figured the organisation that supports them would run like a well-oiled machine.
Nobody who knows the wardens can fault their dedication to their mahi, or would call into question their overwhelming aroha ki te tangata. But as Wally Haumaha said,
they've had to fight tooth and nail to stay afloat in many respects.
It seems like the systems, funding, processes and legislation we might assume are all in place and humming along nicely aren't working.
And sometimes there are issues that come up within the organisation.
Māori Wardens need to get over themselves. I think that the problems that exist are created internally, and they need to get over that and come together in a joint effort to protect their communities.
I'm Amber, he's Murdoch, and you're listening to Viz Manaaki, a Māori Warden podcast.
Tēnā koe, my name is Tangihaere Gloria Harihari Hughes. I'm a Māori Warden, badge number 5932. I've been a warden since 2007. Worked as the national president for 9 years throughout the Waiariki and Waikato area.
This is Gloria Hughes. Speaking to her, it seemed like if wardens could stick to what they're good at, aroha ki te tangata, things would be simpler.
When you talk about aroha ki te tangata, what does that mean? They need to get together and have wānanga that breaks these down. The significance of Māori, it's like meeting and greeting.
Like the ability to converse in te reo Māori, breaking down barriers around whakamā or shyness.
Particularly marae. Somebody might come along and say, kei he ngā paku, and they'll just stand there and they don't say anything. So I said, so those are the basic things we take them through. He aha te kawa o tēnei marae. Kei he ngā paripatu, kei he te parikai. So we take them through all of those things so they are able to respond if they can and not be embarrassed by the fact that they can't speak Māori. E whai atu koutou te reo, ko tai te kaha.
In this last episode of Viz Manaaki, we're looking forward, future gazing.
How does this essential, beautiful mahi continue? How do we see to it that the wardens not only survive, but thrive? What does Viz Manaaki look like in the mid-21st century? And are the wardens set up for that?
That's the past, and we learn from the past. You know, you've got to look forward now. How do you bring back the unity of Māori Wardens throughout New Zealand?
So we're going to do what Whai Gloria recommends. We're going to look back into the past.
Wait, not too far, because we already did a whole episode on warden history.
No, but we're going to look at how that past could shape a new unified future for Wātene Māori.
Remember in episode 2? We left off at the point where Mātua Peter Walden had become president of the New Zealand Māori Wardens Association.
The turnaround really was that the fact that the wardens themselves refused to quit. The principle of a Māori warden is quite simple. You are there because the people want you. You'll be there as long as they want you, and when they don't want you, you'll quietly withdraw. Now, the people wanted the wardens right through that period, and they needed them.
He rewrote the constitution and formed all those sub-associations, and it was administrative heaven.
So we've got 3 organisations to keep track of here. First, there's the New Zealand Māori Council, which, like the Wardens, can trace its roots way back to the mid-19th century and has existed in various forms, all aimed more or less at the ideal of mana motuhake. In 1962, the council was given legal authority over the Wardens.
Then there's Te Puni Kōkiri, or TPK, the Ministry of Māori Development, which provides funding and practical support for the Wardens.
Finally, we've got the New Zealand Māori Wardens Association. This was set up by Wardens for Wardens, basically to make sure their voice was being heard by both the New Zealand Māori Council and Te Puni Kōkiri. At least it did up until 2012, when everything went wrong and the association unravelled.
Unravelled? Well, that doesn't sound good.
Yeah, it was a hard time for the Wardens.
Okay, well, let's break down the story of what happened. So in the 2000s, the government wants to beef up the Māori Wardens. TPK works up a plan to give them more money, more training and resources to go out and do their thing bigger and better than ever.
But then there was, shall we say, a bit of a power struggle.
Yep. The New Zealand Māori Council lodged a claim with the Waitangi Tribunal. Their argument was that under Section 6 of the Treaty of Waitangi Act 1975, the Crown, in this case that's Te Puni Kōkiri, the government department, had breached the treaty principles.
And by breached, the Māori Council argued that they were being excluded, that they were, well, overlooked in this new funding arrangement between the Māori Wardens and Te Puni Kōkiri.
So, in 2007, the Māori Wardens funding program got the green light. There's a few funds available for operational costs. There's also a capacity and capability fund too. But a few years later, there's a snag.
Basically, the Wardens' internal administration systems had a really hard time keeping up with all this new cash and the new responsibilities that went along with it.
Remember, this is an entirely voluntary organisation. They don't have an army of admin staff doing all this stuff.
Things got a bit messy. So much that Te Puni Kōkiri actually paused their annual grant, and the New Zealand Māori Wardens Association was deregistered with the Charities Commission.
Yeah, it was ugly. Lots of drama. Gloria Hughes was forced out as national president, and the association never really recovered.
That was the demise of the New Zealand Māori Wardens Association. And it's been there's been 5 attempts since then to replace the association, and every attempt has failed.
Today, Māori Wardens represent the region they work in. You may have heard of us mention the Kirikiriroa Wardens, for example, or the Akarana Wardens, but there's no single unified organisation that represents them all. So when Gloria talks about unity and the need for Māori Wardens to come back together, this is what she means. Mātua Peter Walden says that the Wardens need a voice which can advocate solely for them.
The New Zealand Māori Wardens Association Incorporated, for Māori Wardens, for Māori Wardens, for Māori Wardens, for nothing else.
So they're all singing from that same song sheet of Aroha ki te tangata, in their regions doing the mahi of Māori Wardens.
But when it comes to being structured and being able to respond to national initiatives to do with the Wardens or to advocate for themselves on a national level, they lack the organisational structure to do that.
And so now that you find that every group in the Motu are either in with regionalisation or they're out as independent groups, and some are following just their marae. A sad situation. But however, that's the way that it has come about.
So there's a question over how the Wardens get represented. What replaces the New Zealand Māori Wardens Association?
Another big question is about money. Wardens are unpaid, and for many, that's a huge point of pride.
I would like to see that the tikanga that drives Māori Wardens' creation is kept intact. We're not driven by money. A lot of the work we do is purely voluntary and by way of our marae with tangihanga or whatever happens, our tamariki in the schools, in the kohanga reo, in the kurikaupapa Māori, and huis or kaumātua. That's a gift we give to them by being there to provide our services.
But uniforms, petrol, training, it all adds up. Whaia Gloria does think there's sometimes a place for charging for their services, especially when groups outside of Te Ao Māori ask for their help.
When it comes to functions outside of that, sports and the sporting arena, and we basically do all the sports here in Rotorua, we charge a cost because they ask us to. They ask us because they can apply for funding to come to Māori Wardens. Our funding goes towards our upskilling, training, the uniforms, resources and radios. It goes all towards the growth and development of the group so that it helps to grow our new people that come through.
And those new people, that's another big question for the future of the Wardens. How do they get rangatahi involved? I mean, the median age of this group, like all volunteer groups, is not exactly in the first flush of youth. They need to make sure there are new generations ready to step up into their shoes.
In the last episode, we heard from Bentley and Capri, two warden-curious rangatahi who have followed that time-honoured tradition of following their whānau into the Wardens.
No, so it wasn't a plan actually. I just always seen Koro in there, so I thought I'd just jump along with him, follow his lead. Maybe one day I'll be his lead.
But there are barriers for younger people to get involved, or get more involved with the Wardens. That's something Tina and Linton, who we met last episode, are thinking a lot about.
Because as we know, when you're young, you need a job, you need a bread and butter. So how do we get our young ones just to actually stay and be a part of a volunteer organisation? So our strategic planning, what we have thought about, and this was the shift, because back when then it was completely all voluntary. So what we are looking at now is we still have our volunteer sector, but we're also now looking at into commercialising some fractions, I suppose, of the Māori Wardens, i.e. traffic management services, security, whānau ora for those that are in the hospitals and things like that, so that young people can come on, still be Māori Wardens and still get to be able to put bread and butter on the table, because
The Wardens do all their work with aroha, but there is a clear distinction for Tina between the jobs they can do for koha and the jobs they will charge for.
They're realistic, and charging for jobs is one of the ways this group of Wardens are working towards sustainability.
To be fair, you're actually providing a service where you have to actually have a certain level of skill, right?
And we do have the same skill set as everybody else. And we have to train like everybody else.
Yep.
So if we do that, why can't we charge like everybody else? And I suppose, that was one of the things my nan said many, many years ago. User pays. We can't continue to do it for nothing, because we have to go and get qualified like everyone else, which costs money. So because we're now qualified like everyone else, you expect it still to be done for free. So I suppose, Nan had that mindset back in that time, user pays, and that was what she always used to say, user pays. Well, we are now where we are today, and we're saying the same story, but it's because we've been qualified, we hold the same qualification, and yet people expect the service to be delivered for aroha, next to nothing, maybe a koha, maybe a kai. But we have to change the mindset that we can't continue to do it, because aroha doesn't put petrol in the car. Aroha doesn't turn the lights on at night time, So we have to change people's mindset. But people are only in the mindset because that's what it used to be. So now we have to change the mindset to, well, actually, if you go to the Pākehās and you get them to give it to you, they're going to charge you this much. We can come and do it for you and we might be able to do it for half. Or we might be able to do, some other things around what we do to support you in your kaupapa, but it's about user paid. We can't continue to give the service for nothing. Of course, we'll do our marae stuff for nothing because that's where we're born from. That's where you come from and that's what you do. But then when you work for the corporates, you can't do that stuff with the corporates for nothing. It has to be paid.
Linton says this all really came home when Waikato DHB asked them for help during the COVID-19 pandemic.
And they were asking for traffic management, security, and a welcoming face to welcome the people. And so for them, that was 3 different roles that they would have to fill. But with the Māori Wardens, we have one person that can fulfill all 3 roles. So when you look at the monetary figure that went to that and our worth, we were like, wow. But they told us what we were worth to them, because if they had to pay 3 separate people, that's quite a lot of money. And then when they put it into one person, being the Māori Warden who can manage the traffic at the vaccination or testing site, who can be the security and provide that service, as well as being the welcoming face, well, that really just told us what we're actually worth when we come to looking at those corporates about how and what are we worth.
So Māori Wardens are doing jobs. They need training and resources for those jobs. People are willing to pay them for the mahi, and they bring their philosophy of aroha ki te tangata along with them. Seems like a win-win. But not everybody is on board with wardens getting paid.
Whaia Jojo Paikia, who manages the Akarana Māori Wardens, where we met Marino, has a different take.
We're totally a different kettle of fish. We're just brought up and raised the same way the Queen raised us, our name before us. We just follow her kaupapa and stick to it. Whereas everybody else is like gone astray and money's more important. And what I try and do is encourage our rangatahi and our whānau to go to work first and volunteer services for our team when you can, like how it was back in the day. And everybody laughs at me and calls me a joke. Yeah, I've had a lot of them come to me.
Oh, you talking about the people on the street? The people that come here to...
No, I'm talking about other people, like other entities out there that said, oh, you fellas are fun, you guys get nothing. Well, it's not about that. That's who you know how to get resources off. That's what it is for us.
Kirikiriroa Wardens have a totally different take on this to the Akarana Wardens. Linton and Tina are saying we need to be paid so we can support our rangatahi to put bread and butter on the table, whereas Whaia Jojo is saying just do what you can when you can.
And being a volunteer organisation is part of what makes that possible. Here's our good friend Gloria Dornan, who's Joyce's daughter, and not the other Gloria we've been hearing from in this episode already.
Our motto is aroha ki te tangata, love all mankind. So there's no hourly rate. You do this as a volunteer. The biggest difference is that Māori Wardens have a choice to make on the structure of their organisation. So what we want to put in place as wardens, we can implement. Police don't have that because they have to run to what's been set. Wardens are volunteers, the police are paid. So when you're paid, you do what your boss says. When you're a volunteer, you have a say. That's where the difference is.
So we came into this hoping for a beautiful vision of the wardens in the future.
Sunshine, rainbows, unicorns, a warden on every corner picking up little Murdochs off the street and making life awesome.
But what I'm hearing is there are lots of different ideas, not about what wardens will do in the future, but how they will do it, under what auspices and with what resources. It turns out there was a big effort in the past to build up a bigger and better unified version of the wardens, but it all fell apart. and everyone has a different idea of what went wrong and what should happen next instead.
And we haven't even got to the really thorny bit, the 1962 Māori Community Development Act.
You know I love it when you talk about legislation. This legislation is what governs the wardens at present, and it's even older than you, Murdoch.
There are big questions around whether it is even fit for purpose anymore. Like how wardens can confiscate keys from Māori people or take actions to stop people bringing alcohol onto the marae.
So when we look at the legislation talks about alcohol and people with alcohol, our Māori people and alcohol. But when you look at the work today, it's not so much really focused on alcohol for our people. It's more about how can we help the people regardless of whatever the situation is. And whilst alcohol might be an issue, it's not the only issue that we work on. If they're homeless, how can we help you? If you need food, how can we help you? It's just a lot of things that we do that will really help our community. It doesn't matter what it is. And it may be, how do we get my power on? Do I need an advocate to work with winds to get my power on, to get a full graph from me? It just comes in so many different forms.
Right now, it seems more like the wardens work in spite of the legislation and the structures around them, rather than because of or enabled by them.
According to the wardens, politicians and bureaucrats we spoke to, it's time for a change. And the legislation is a big part of that.
Nanaia Mahuta says she was working on that when she was Minister for Māori Development from 2017 to 2020.
One of the things we tried to work out was how do we help the wardens to become independent organisations. At the moment, their powers sit under the Māori Community Development Act. The organising body, even though they have their own entity, they have the New Zealand Māori Council as well, and often there's been quite a bit of politics around that part of their operation. I think the future state for the Māori Wardens would be one where, as an organisation, they're an independent organisation and that they are well supported in every part of the Māori community in the first instance. And where they contribute to the fabric of the broader community, some of those contributions should be recognised and provided for by local government, central government, government agencies, not-for-profit organisations, as well as private sector. And if everybody gave a little bit, then the wardens would be able to sustain themselves. The thing is that the wardens have to do a bit of work as well. So their future state would be that they would organise themselves to be able to say, this is who we are, these are the things that we want to be participating in to support our communities throughout Aotearoa, but these are the absolute critical parts of the services or the awhi, the aroha that we provide that can actually transform, outcomes for individuals and for whānau. You'll be amazed how many different things different warden groups are doing that have changed lives. It's humbling.
What Nanaia is suggesting is there should be a core list of warden responsibilities, stuff the wardens are mandated and funded to do. Some groups might want to go above and beyond, but they all do those core things. Help in civil defence, emergencies, interact with the police, traffic control, and working on their marae. Te Rau Clark, who worked closely with the wardens in a role at Te Puni Kōkiri in the 2000s, also had some ideas of how to better support them.
One big thing we wanted to ask him about is what to do about wardens' warrants. Currently, those come directly from the minister. Does that stay the same? Or should warrants come from wardens themselves or from the New Zealand Māori Council?
If you talk to Māori Wardens do not want to lose the minister actually approving their warrants. Okay? They like the idea that a minister of the Crown is responsible for giving them their warrants, and they don't want to lose that aspect of it. I don't think it makes any difference, really, but they're so staunchly opposed to anyone else taking that responsibility on, other than the minister, That is, that's one of the issues for them is that they could manage it themselves. They just need to set up a system that's going to work for both the minister and themselves to make it easier for them to control their own membership.
It strikes me that actually the permission, the social license that wardens have to conduct their work comes from the people in the first place. I hear what you're saying, that there is a very strong attachment to the idea of a warrant from the minister, but I don't, as an onlooker, for me, that's not where the power comes from.
Oh, I totally agree. I agree with you. Their strength is from their connection to communities and whānau. I think the idea of having the minister's signature on the bottom of the paper legitimises their authority or their standing, or they see that as legitimising their standing.
Nanaya agrees it doesn't matter where the warrants come from, so long as the warrants come with the support wardens need to do the job.
So I don't see any problem from a regulatory point of view that if they said, no, we want to come under the mana of our iwi or under the kingitanga, and the issue of funding will still come up, and the issue of funding will be an issue whether they're under the Crown or under any other fully independent movement, like the kingitanga, like Rātana, or iwi.
Now, let's imagine for a moment, Murdoch, that we could wave our magic wand and create the perfect scenario for Māori Wardens. What would that look like?
I reckon we'd see strong, self-governing regional structures that understand the specific needs of their communities, adequate and sustainable funding that allows wardens to do their mahi without having to constantly scramble for resources, and maybe a deep and respectful partnership with police and the government agencies based on shared goals and mutual understanding. A renewed focus on attracting and training the next generation of wardens, ensuring the legacy continue. And most importantly, drumroll, mana motu hake.
The ideal of mana motu hake, or self-governance.
Wardens need the autonomy to make decisions, to lead within their communities, to truly live that mantra of aroha ki te tangata.
But let's be real, Murdoch. There are some hurdles to clear before we reach this warden utopia.
Yeah, like the Māori Community Development Act.
Yeah, that old chestnut.
Well, Tero Clark seemed pretty clear about where he stands on that one.
The responsibility that Māori Wardens report to the New Zealand Māori Council, take that out.
So that's Tero's view, but it's potentially controversial. The New Zealand Māori Council has previously argued in court that taking the wardens out of their direct control is a violation of te tiriti o Waitangi.
But interestingly enough, when we talked to the co-chair of the council, George Ngātai, he was open to the idea of setting the wardens free.
What kind of things would you and the council say need to be changed, need to be reviewed?
Oh, look, I think that once upon a time we used to actually have community workers, community development officers, which were absorbed within Te Puni Kōkiri. That there could be something that could be reintroduced, because that, I think, from a Māori council point of view, could be seen as an operationalisation of community development officers from Māori Council's point of view, and then actually looking at how that could be interpreted from a New Zealand Māori Wardens point of view. So there needs to be some change around that, and I think that there is a need for both to operate, and I know that the New Zealand Māori Wardens have always wanted their independence. We're supportive of that. But there needs to be some form of accountability around who monitors that act that is currently in place now, and how do you then actually formalise the new structure around the New Zealand Māori Wardens and the New Zealand Māori Council, because there needs to be some change.
So what is stopping all this from happening? Because basically everyone seems to agree on the way forward generally. Independent wardens organised at a national level, funded to do the job, and a bit more clarity on just exactly what that job is.
George reckoned the current government was, shall we say, unlikely to see the wardens as a priority.
There's not an appetite for kaupapa Māori. This may be something that will likely be put to the side.
And part of the problem seems to be that the wardens themselves are divided. There are a lot of strong personalities with different views on what should be done, by whom, where and when.
Yeah, frankly, there's a lot of politics happening within the wardens. There's a lot of grudges, a lot of internal strife that keeps them from coming together.
But scarcity will do that. When you're fighting over crumbs, someone is bound to get their elbows out. I think if wardens were operating from a position of abundance, it would be a lot easier for them to come together. They all ultimately just want to get on with some hivizmanaaki.
We're very pleased to announce together, Minister Costello and myself, an increase in the baseline funding.
Hoi nei te pānui a te kāwanatanga I te rā nei, I ngā minita e hikoi ana I ngā tiriti me ngā mākete o Frankton I Kirikiriroa.
It will strengthen our ability to develop a range of services and also build our capability to stretch our services across whānau, rangatahi.
In this year's budget, on the 22nd of May 2025, the government announced an extra boost of funding for the Māori Wardens. They'll get an extra $1.5 million.
So that's about $2.7 million in funding each year.
When we asked Dr. Aroha Harris, who we heard from in episode 2, about what would help the wardens thrive and going forward, she was pretty clear and pretty hopeful.
Maybe it's time for the wardens to write their own code and not be told what it should be. Maybe they have a community code or something. I can't see how it's possible with the current government though, but...
Governments come and go, but wardens are enduring.
That's true. And I feel like Māori are, always willing to rise to a challenge, that sometimes the worst governments might bring out the best in us.
Māori Wardens were born at a tipping point, when the Māori population was on the brink of being outnumbered by the coloniser. Wardens were part of a broader effort to maintain mana motuhake.
And as the demography of Aotearoa has continued to shift and change, Māori Wardens have also changed their scope.
Aotearoa will keep growing and changing, and so will the Wardens. So let's bring it back. At the age of 11, I was living with my auntie in Te Kaupata, and I decided to run away and go stay with my mum in Pātea. My only mode of transportation was to hitchhike. One Māori warden on one day made one intervention that changed everything for me. Remember way back in episode 1 when Gloria Dornan said this about her mother, Joyce Williams?
She leaves this impression on you and an impact of the way you look at things in life, the way you think, and it all comes from her.
Joyce was one warden, but there were thousands of them then. And if all of them changed the life of one tamariki, that's thousands of people whose lives were totally changed by one act of manaaki, one moment of aroha ki te tangata. So whatever it is they need to do, or we need to do, to ensure that we keep space in society for this organisation, it is so worth it.
We owe a massive amount of gratitude to all our gracious guests for sharing their stories and insights with us.
And to you, our listeners, for joining us on this journey. Kia ora rawa atu.
Kia ora and thanks for listening. Thanks to Gloria Hughes, Nanaya Mahuta, Tero Clark, Peter Walden, Jojo Paikia, Gloria Dornan, Dr. Aroha Harris and George Ngatai. Viz Manaaki was written by me, Dr. Amber Hamill.
And me, Murdoch Ngaho. Thanks to our producers Justine Murray and William Ray, executive producer Tim Watkin, and production coordinator Brianna Juritich-Gregg.
Thanks to William Saunders, the engineer for this episode. And special shout out to our Auckland studio engineer, Corey Fuimaono.
Find and follow Viz Manaaki on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.